Thank you and welcome to Mission Reboot. We are serving as your digital navigators, helping you to think about today how to show up online. For so many of us, when you're in prison, you're offline. And what's important is, showing up the right way and starting off the right way. So, Josh is he's my digital navigator. I have to tell you, a few minutes ago, my computer was going dark. I'm like, I think my computer's crashing. And Josh came over and said, I don't know. Let me check. Or have you pushed this button? And all of a sudden there was light. So
Yeah.
we laughed about that because sometimes one button makes all the difference.
And technology changes so fast,
Yeah.
and the next laptop you buy will have different buttons
Yeah.
that do different things, and
Yeah.
that's the world.
Yeah. So moral of that story is make sure your friends have your younger friends
Your tech
have the
savvy
same
friends.
type of technology that you have.
Yeah.
But showing back up online, when I
Mhm.
went to prison, Facebook was the social media platform that young people were using in colleges. And then all of a sudden, Twitter,
Mhm.
all of these things started happening. And so I couldn't wait to come home and look at it all.
Mhm.
But I think I watched it. I didn't understand it. It was too many buttons, so many things going on. But I also knew I needed to be thoughtful about how I showed up.
Mm.
So I started off as what they call a lurker,
Okay.
where I had an account, but just hanging out, observing what other folks were doing, trying to make sure that I understood. Um, and then over time, I put together a thought and a strategy around
Mm.
how do I want to use this?
Yeah.
And then I started implementing slowly, those things. For me, LinkedIn was the last place that I feel like I showed up because I didn't really have enough of the biography,
Yeah.
the history that would have made LinkedIn a little bit more relevant.
Yeah. It's kind of like an online resume
Yeah.
almost. Yeah. Each social media platform or just uh it's funny that how we talk about technology and one of the first places we go is social media.
Yeah.
Because that is such a prominent thing. But each platform really has its own distinct kind of taste and flavor and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn is very professional focused. Facebook is like maybe where your like family members and
Yep.
relatives are, and you were a lot smarter than I was when I came home, and because the iPhone and Facebook both had released for the first time when I came home, and so it was all new. The phone at first really threw me off because it didn't have any buttons on it. That's funny you mentioned buttons because it was all just a touch screen.
Yeah.
Most of it, and I was like, how do I get out of this thing that I opened? There's no like back button. But anyway, I was not as smart as you in that I just jumped in and I started connecting with all these friends online, and all of a sudden, all of these people had access to me,
Yeah.
and I realized some of these people I do not wish them to have access to me, because they were sometimes people I was locked up with, and in a particular season they were my friends, but as I had grown and matured and changed, they hadn't. And now these people, and so I had to kind of undo some of that connection I reestablished with people.
Yeah. So you had to connect and then disconnect.
Yeah, like I accidentally connected to all this stuff, and I think
Well,
that's
because the algorithms, those platforms feed you information. Hey, this person's your friend. This person's your friend. You
Yep.
know this person. You know this person, and it's just easy to make that connection. So it's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I know that person. I know that person.
And it's like a tidal wave. You can get kind of sucked into it and overwhelmed by it really quick. And I think that's why we're having this conversation, because it's how do we control rather than kind of be overwhelmed or taken into this world, because we all know, it can really
Right.
suck you in.
Like for me, the first thing I did was to make sure through my probation officer or my supervisor at the time, can I even get on the internet? Because people don't
Yeah.
realize sometimes your judgment and commitment papers will prohibit you from continuing
Yep.
to get online, which is something that you can try. You can figure that out now and then begin to strategize. I also recognized Facebook was my first entree because my daughters were there, and I was horrified by the things that I saw that were being shared, either that they created and or their friends, and I immediately had them.
That's why people don't want their parents
Right,
Yeah.
but
as their friends on Facebook.
but I
Yeah.
basically told them, it's like, hey, you have to recognize that this is not private. It really is public.
It's not
It
private.
lives forever. This is a moment in time in your life, and that there may come a time where you want another job or seek another opportunity, that anything and everything you've ever said and done lives on, and these are the platforms that they will review. So be careful what you say, because every time you open your mouth, even digitally, your mind is on parade.
Yeah.
And they, of course, knucked and bucked initially, but then they began to really get it because they had experiences, or and they listen. But I think that that's important. And the other thing is, why are you on there? To be on Facebook and to have a friend, just because you labeled it friend, you really aren't my friend. They're associates and they're real friends I talk to. So you just have to, for me, balance between what's worth it. For me, it was the fastest way to connect to the people I loved, to let them know I was home and accessible.
Yeah, no, and I think connection and being able to have access to people is really important. I think what I like is that you be thoughtful about it, have a plan, recognize you're in control.
Yeah.
Remember, everything will live on. And for those of us who are coming home, the thought is employers, bankers, landlords,
Law enforcement.
everybody will, regardless of what they say, many of them will use
Absolutely.
social media to do some quick checks on
Yes.
who you are. And as you're trying to upgrade your life and to connect to opportunity, you have to remember that some of these platforms and, will make your information available. So, you just got to curate your content a very specific way in order for you, for whatever is the outcome you seek.
Yep.
Yeah.
And employers absolutely will, look you up, whether it's supposed to or not. There are services that will curate your profile and that will assemble, hey, this is Teresa's Instagram, her Facebook, her LinkedIn, and they will send that in. And this is research that people want to know before they hire you. I also personally met somebody who was in law enforcement who did not know my background. Before he told me that they even use it and they can bypass people who have private profiles. There's no such thing as a private profile, and they would actually research people that they were investigating. And so anything that's online,
I'm sure that was a great conversation for you.
yeah,
You were
yeah.
like,
And then I was like, well, I help people with criminal records get employed because I was locked up. And then that guy, he was like, what did I just tell? And I was like, man, this is interesting. For once, the situation's kind of turned. But yeah,
But
it's
that
not
is so
private.
true. And to remember, even with social media, you do have privacy rights. So you should, to some degree, be, especially with employment, that if they use your social media against you and it doesn't come up in your formal criminal report, and somehow if you ask if you don't get the job, hey, why not? And sometimes they disclose and sometimes they won't. Other times that you just go into that deep
Yeah.
cyberspace black hole and you never get a response from anybody, because now technology is what we interact with. They no longer take paper, and you can't get a person. So
Yeah.
just don't say or do anything that you don't want to come back and bite you.
Yeah. So I think initially is using it to connect with family, friends, and loved ones and community is really good. Um, when in doubt, start slower, because you can't pull things back. And then as you're really go deep in one platform at a time. Make sure that you understand if you're going to start with Facebook, make sure you understand, is this in my feed? Is this in somebody else's feed? If I get this level of access, can people post on it's all of that level of detail that's necessary. And as you perfect that platform, then, move to the next one and the next one and the next one with some level of understanding. As Josh said, they all work and function a little bit differently, but definitely if you're going to use it for professional purposes, I think still LinkedIn is like one of the
Yeah.
It
better
is the leader,
platforms,
right? Yes.
but it is a resume. So
Yeah.
if you have a lapse in your employment, you got to just get creative. There are people who can help you summarize your employment and help you to create a profile that makes sense.
Yeah. And
But
there's a young man that I mentor, and those of us who have records and we come out and we want to do good, and maybe we're doing something in the community, nonprofits, etc. Sometimes we end up in the news for good reasons. And there are articles out there. I mean, you've done a lot of awesome stuff, and I've seen some of you, but he was starting to accumulate that, and he was like, I want when people Google me that something other than my charges pop up.
Mm.
And eventually he started having good news that was highlighting him. But then the next version was, hey, I don't want to be known as somebody who is incarcerated. I actually just want to be a normal person. And so now he started to kind of reel some of that back and say, hey, what was good for me at one point is now no longer serving me.
Yeah.
And he had to do what you kind of asked, which is kind of clean up some of that stuff. Even though it was good things about
Yeah.
him, he still wanted to clean it up.
Yeah. The moral of that story is curate,
Yeah.
stay in control. If you don't like where things are going, hit pause, come up with a plan, regroup or reboot,
Yeah. Yeah.
and keep going. But
Yeah.
thanks for this conversation on how do we reconnect online, and we hope this was helpful. And read and look at some of the other information that we have available for you. Thank you.